So these are the tools I used for the chain replacement. There's a list of tools on the instruction sheet. I don't think you need all of them, but these are the ones that I used. You need a drill, battery, cordless, somewhere near a 1/4 inch drill bit for the rivets in the camper and possibly the rivets on the chain. 3/16 is also useful. That's the actual size of the rivets. You need at least 8 of these rivets. They should come with your chains. If you go with a hammer method to put these rivets in, you need some kind of bucking bar. If you have a piece of steel laying around that's flat and clean, I suggest that. You need either a 7/16 wrench. I suggest some kind of extension and a socket wrench, or you can use an adjustable wrench to get the gearboxes off. You're going to need a pop rivet gun and some 3/16. I used 3/16 by 1/4 aluminum rivets to mount your telescoping top piece back to the roof when you're done. You'll need at least 12 of those. You'll probably need a pair of pliers to use to get the rivets out of the telescoping rod, get the chain off. You'll need a hacksaw blade or some kind of long skinny piece of metal about the size of a hacksaw blade to finesse your chains back in the bottom. I found a wood clamp to be useful. I wouldn't recommend like a C-clamp because you're clamping to your aluminum on the trailer, but it holds your middle telescoping piece in place while you're pushing the chain in, and also keeps it from dropping into the body of the camper if it's loose. You'll need some duct tape. This is called arrow coil. Instead of using like WD-40 on rusty bolts, this really soaks in and penetrates the rust and can really break it free. So if you've got a rusted on gearbox, I highly suggest tracking some of that down. WD-40 works, it's just not as good. And this is the dry lube that I'm using for the chains on the reinstall. It sprays on wet and then dries white, and it's just a real like powdery lubricant. You're also going to need a step ladder or 6-foot ladder, something that can get you up to the upper rivets of the roof. You'll need a piece of wire. You can go with a thin 14-16 gauge speaker wire kind of thing. I used pieces of Romex. I think it was 12 gauge, but anything you can get into the top telescope tube just to hang on to it so you can drop it into the other tube and then pull it back out. And you'll need a rag as well and some thin speaker wire to drag that rag through your tracks. So here's a couple more things I forgot to mention during the what I used. You're going to need 3/4 inch stainless carriage bolts. You need a minimum of 8 to replace the bolts on your 2 gearboxes, the ones that stick down out of the camper. I used a lock washer and a machine nut. You could probably use a nylock. You still probably want a washer just because you're bolting up to a piece of aluminum. So you need at least 8 of those each, and I found them in the little pull-out drawers that have the variety of hardware. And these the washer and the nut are also stainless. So you may need a file. I found that some of my telescoping pieces had some sharp burrs on them that could drag against the aluminum sidewall or could drag against the other telescoping piece. So you can carefully file those off. It doesn't have to be a curved file, but any kind of fine, flat file would work. I bought these little like lock ring washers with the internal tooths, anticipating to use those to lock these bolts in place, but they don't fit the bolts perfect. So I tried to snip these with a wire cutters and fit them on there, but it doesn't work very well. So I have scrapped that idea. Just went with this setup. You just have to be careful putting the gearbox on that you don't push your bolts back up into the frame. So after you've got your camper leveled, your roof is resting on your sidewalls, you want to come to your gearbox. There's one in the front and the back. They're both supported by 4 nuts that have carriage bolts coming down out of the frame. This one has a bolt broke off here in the back, but there'll be one on the front and back of each gearbox. You want to start by taking those off. I'm using a 7/16 socket. You can use an adjustable wrench too. You want to set your gearbox down, keep your teeth facing the same direction they're facing as you pull them down, so when you put your new chains in, they'll be set to where you need them already. And you want to remember the front and the back of the box, because it does matter the direction when you put it back on. Now from this point you can see the ends of your chains. This outside one goes towards the driver's side of the camper. This inside one goes towards the door of the camper. You can see that this tooth is fairly worn. Should be nice and round, but it's all chewed up. And that's the last link you need to get your roof high enough to set it on its sidewalls. So up in the corner of the roof, that's your sidewall support. These 3 rivets are the ones that hold your telescoping arm in, and those are the 3 we need to remove. Generally you want to use a drill bit that's slightly larger than the diameter of the rivet. And you want to go slow. Your rivet starts spinning and you need to either try to hold it with something or you can get it at a different angle. You don't want to ram through it. Alright, so that's what it'll look like when it comes off. Head of your rivet will be on your drill bit, or it could fall off. And now that rivet there is out. 2 more. And now all your rivets are out. You want to make sure that the rivets are not still stuck in the hole at all. If they are, you can push them through with a drill bit. And your telescoping arm should drop down. It'll slide down. I'm going to bring that down so you can reach it to work with it. You can slide down your secondary piece as well. So that's a good working height. And what you're aiming to do is get a wire through one of these holes. The instructions say a 14 to 16 gauge loop of wire. I'm just using a 12 gauge piece of a single strand of Romex that I'll hook through that middle hole. Bent this little piece of copper wire here. We're going to fish this through. I'm going to get a good little crank on it. So once you get your wire hooked up, you can pull it up and down. You can't lose it into this tube here. So these 3 buttons are all one piece. There's a glide in here that this thing slides on. You can use a piece of duct tape. Make sure you've got it touching all these buttons and just kind of wrap it around it so it doesn't fall in before you're ready to get it out. So once you have your duct tape in place, your little pieces tighten. This one's kind of hard to get it in there, but you can get it to attach. I'm going to take your middle piece, push it down in the next section, just far enough that it, I don't know if you can see, just far enough that it gets past the sliders. And then you want to fish your sliders out of there without them falling into the track. But your tape should have held them in place. And there's one out. So that's your 3 buttons you can see from the outside. Same thing on this side. Attach it from the tape, slide it out. So we're back under the camper where the gearbox came off. Before you pull your chain out, you may want to consider this. The instructions tell you to pull your chain and then later fish a piece of wire through the track to pull a rag through to clean out any debris or pieces of chain that might be in there. I tried various types of wire. I couldn't get it through. Attach this little thin bread tie, and it's actually just wedged in the first link, in between the first 2 links of that chain. And it's attached to a thin piece of wire. And on the other end of the wire is a rag through a little loop. And there's a zip tie there so it can't fall off. So once you've got this pretty well attached, you want to go back around to where you were taking the telescoping arm off and pull this chain out, and the wire should follow. Once you have your sliders out, you pull your extrusion back up by the wire that you hooked up to it. And there's the top of your chain. And there's the end link with your wire through. And out pops your rag with a bunch of dust and debris that was in the track. Now if you take your chain out,
You can lay it flat on the floor with absolutely no tension to it. It probably is a little loose and should be replaced. This one, the only damage I see is to this last link. All the rest seem to be in okay shape.
So after you have your chain out, take these two rivets out. That holds your chain to this aluminum extrusion. You want to remember which way this piece faces in relation to your chain. So in this case, this piece is facing this way, and the holes that we drilled out on the other end are on this back side. So this side, the only holes that are going to be there are these two rivets. And you want to make sure when you put it back, you have it the same way. So you want to drill these two rivets out. And as you see, they're going to spin. This did it on my rear chains too. So what I did is get this gangly thing to go sideways, and with a pair of pliers, I attempt to grab the head of the rivet with enough force that it hangs onto it as you drill it. And as soon as it pops, you should be able to pull your rivet out. Now you got one more to do. And that one's out too. Now you can pull your extrusion off of the end of your cable. And that rivet that fell out was from the roof rivets that we drilled out, and it stayed inside of here. So here's our new chain, nice and tight and coiled up. You'll need two rivets that should have come with your chain if you got it from the Apache replacement parts website. Remember, you want to orient this the same direction the other one was to your extrusion. Fish your wires up in there. I guess should fit up in there fairly tight. And if you recall, this was the side that you had the pliers on, so you'll want to push your rivets back in the same direction with the head on this side. So now both rivets are pressed through, and now you have to flatten them. I happen to have an arbor press from doing some other work. It's a little 1-ton one from Harbor Freight. It's a cheap one, but it'll do the job for this. You can also use a piece of steel and a hammer. So I'll show you how to do one each way, one with the arbor press and one with the hammer and piece of steel bucking bar. So with the hammer and steel bucking bar, you want to lay it with your rivets facing down. Make sure you're not on your plastic piece that you're hanging off so you don't smash that. Get you a hammer. Try to keep this fairly flat on the bucking bar and smash it down. It's in there, it's not going anywhere. You just want to make sure that it's even or less than this black plastic piece so that it'll slide into the other extrusion. So for the arbor press, you want to take your extrusion, again using a little bucking bar as a piece to hold it. Line your press up with your rivet. Sure that it's flat. In this case, hold this arbor press down because it's lightweight. You smash your rivet down. New chain's now attached. Alright, so here's a trick. This piece here is extremely loose and wants to drop in. If you carefully use a wood clamp, you want to get it down here on this aluminum strip on the inside. Clamp it so it can't go up and down. So I failed to mention it in the tool section, but you're going to need a flathead screwdriver and a pair of snips probably to get these little retaining rings off so that you can get your old rusty carriage bolts out from under the camper. So you pry these down best you can, and if you can get a pair of snips up in there, you can cut them and you can pull them off. And then you want to shove this carriage bolt up into the track and then reach up in there and kind of coerce it towards the opening. There's your rusty old original carriage bolt. You want to repeat that for your other 3 bolts.
Now you're ready to install your brand new stainless carriage bolts. You can technically fish these up in there by hand by holding it between your fingers like that. So you can get these up there like that. Drop it into the square cutout. And if you have those retaining rings, now would be the time to slide those on. But as I said, I couldn't locate any, so we're not using them. There's that one. Now if you can't reach up in there or don't want to reach up in there, there's also little tool grabbers they make. Little spring-loaded deals that can grab your bolt head and fish it in there, and you release the spring and it's in. So now your 4 bolts are in. Now you want to spray your lube of choice into the gearbox. So this plate will be lubed when you put your chain in. So now we're ready to put our chains in. We sprayed some dry lube on this chain. It's the white powder looking stuff on it. Sprays on wet, dries white. You want to make sure your links are facing out. That's the piece that's going to go into the gear. And the chains are fairly tight, so they can take some finessing. First links are the most difficult. Alright, so that's about as far as we're going to get. It's hit the plate at the bottom. So we need to go slide that hacksaw blade in and see if we can get the chain past it. You want to pull this back just a bit so it's not wedged up against that plate. So you can see our end of our cables in there. This is in the gearbox hole. We're looking towards the door side of the camper. That's our cable coming through. There's the head of the carriage bolt. So you want to put your hacksaw blade up in there. Get it past this little ledge right there. Try to get your chain link to slide past it. So you have to stick this in here and go around and push. If you have 2 people, this would be a little easier. Someone can hold the blade and someone can kind of wiggle and finagle the chain. We have 1 person, so we're going to stick it in here and then go push the chain and repeat until the link clears that plate. Alright, so you've fought the good fight. After probably 10 attempts, finally got the chain past that little notch with the hacksaw blade. So now these 2 rivets are the ones we put in, so the chain is right here, and that's our upper extrusion. So what we need to do is push it down till it's past this point so we can get these plastic pieces back in, and then we'll pull it back up and attach it to the roof. Here's a little cheat. If you can slide this up past where you need it, you don't have to slide this piece as far down. This top piece. So this here is where the plastic pieces go in. So these are the plastic pieces that are, I think they call them bushings in the instruction. These are the ones that you're taping off. You can see these from the outside. But they're caked with, I guess, aluminum dust and chain debris. I actually take them into the kitchen and wash them out in the sink and dry them off. You could probably get away with a scrub brush. You just want to get this debris and dirt off there without gouging this plastic. So anything soft, I think the instructions suggest a toothbrush. So these are the cleaned up pieces, just some soap and water. These still have some discoloring, probably still
be a little junk to come off of there, but fairly clean now and ready to be put back in. So you want your slider to be just above your upper telescoping piece. You can get your plastic sliders in here. I've sprayed some of the dry lube on these too. Generally, they don't want to stick to the duct tape anymore because it gets on the back a little bit. That's alright, it'll stick enough for this. And you'll have to look down in here and look at your inner telescoping arm because you want to slide it up into the plastic pieces, or you want to slide your lower piece down. Alright, now it's in. You need to pull your telescoping piece back up. I wrap the wire around a screwdriver, in this case a clamp. You get some leverage when you pull. And you want to pull your chain back up. At this point, you can probably take your wire stuck in your tube off. So we've got our sliders in. And peel the duct tape off. Our upper telescoping extrusion is almost to the roof. So you slide up a little bit more, and you wanted to get it to go into that. That's your 3 holes where you drilled the rivets out earlier. So your extrusion's back in. You want to wiggle that telescoping arm till the holes line up so you get your rivets in. So this is the 3/16 by 1/4 pop rivets. They're aluminum. Want to get those wiggled into your hole. Push them flush with the back. Take your rivet gun with the proper size hole in it, whichever one fits the shaft. This one fits these rivets. Want to get that onto the shaft of the rivet. Make sure you push it back tight. Pull down. Push it back towards the edge. And it'll pop off. And that rivet's in. Repeat that with the 2 other rivets. So now there's 3 brand new pop rivets holding your extrusion in place. So now all that's left is to put the gearbox on. So you want to get your gearbox installed. You want to slide the rear shaft into the holes. Make sure this pin lines up with the notches on the lift tube connector that runs to your back gearbox. And you want to wiggle this up into the chain. Like that. And I like to go ahead and get on a bolt or 2 if I can. That way they can't get pushed up into the trailer. Make sure your bolts are all sticking out about evenly. That means there's not turned crooked in your channel up there. They won't be in the way of your chains. And I recommend once you get this gearbox on for your set of chains, go ahead and test the camper. Don't have to put it up and down. Just go pick it up from the back, drop it back down, make sure it's lifting evenly. If you get this gearbox backwards, it'll lift one end and it'll try to tighten down the other end. So you have to make sure you put it back in the right way. And then proceed to do the other 2 chains in the back.